Leading the charge today, Greg, isn't it?
Doing all right for a piece of Bunnings balsa, isn't it?
Welcome back to my lure box, guys. In today's video we have got a very special treat. It's been a while since I've done one of these. It's a what's in my box, but I'm doing it with a super special guest. This is Greg Doc Lures Vinall from the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast, and boy am I stoked to have him with me today. We're going to talk lures, and he's got some special little gems in his lure box that we can talk to and get a few tips from Greg on what he likes to use and how he likes to make them. He makes his own lures. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's got some really good insights that I'd love to draw out of him in a quick little video looking at what's in his box. So let's go over and get him onto it, and then we can talk about his podcast and where that's going as we close this video out. Let's have a look. Greg, thank you for coming on my show, mate.
Great to have you here. Great to be on the other end for a change. Huh?
Yeah.
You've been on the podcast a few times, mate.
Yeah, and it's been really good. But ever since you started your podcast, I wanted to get your insights on some of your lures and see what's in your lure box as well, mate. Because you've asked me, well, you asked me for 3. I think I might have taken 4 or 5.
Yeah, you did a good job of stretching it out and getting a couple of extra. That's all right. We don't mind that.
But now it's our turn to have a look at what you bring.
Well, this is a limited range too, because we've been out jack fishing in Trinity Inlet this morning, and so I've narrowed down my lure box and pulled a heap of stuff out that might normally be in there, just because it wasn't really suitable for what we were doing today. But yeah, there's probably still a few things here that weren't really suitable, but where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with the plastics, because the juicy bits that I really want to check out are the bits that you've made mostly yourself. We can rip through the plastics, because what I can see here, people have also probably already seen when they're chasing for jacks. Yeah. But nonetheless, it's really interesting to see what you've got here. So can you talk us through what your selection is here and what you're using for?
Clearly I like the paddle tail models for jacks, as you can see. Yeah. Most of what I've got there is paddle tails. Yeah. And generally up here we don't use really large lures for jacks, so 3 to 4 inch lures generally do the job. You might pick the odd barra up here and there, but if you're specifically targeting jacks, a 3 or 4 inch lures plenty. Yeah, okay. And I like my natural colours, as you can see, so a few hooks there. Usually I've got a few snake locks around and that sort of thing, just to nearly always rig weedless, of course, because we're jack fishing. So
and that's what we were doing this morning. So we were lucky enough, Phil Laycock took us out on his boat this morning, and we got to send some lures into some snags. I got hooked up plenty of times, not onto jacks, onto snags, but we've had fun doing it. And mate, that's fantastic. A lot of weedless stuff we're throwing today, but the thing that got it done today, the most fish, you got a big cod and a few others. There was trevally. I got outfished today, folks, by Greg in a big way. His homemade, handcrafted balsa lure. Take a look at this, and then we'll get into some of the others.
That's what's left of it anyway. I managed to knock the bib out of it right at the end.
Yeah.
Because I was going to give that to you to take around the top end with you, mate, to try and catch a few barra and jacks and whatever on. Yeah. That's just a balsa, hand carved balsa lure.
Yeah, I still want it for the memories.
You can, well, it's yours to keep.
I can't pass up a lure, Greg. If I get an offer, I'm not going to say no. Yeah.
Coral trout colour's not normally what I would, paint it for estuary use, but I actually painted it for a demonstration.
Yeah, well, that certainly got the job done today.
It did get the job done today, yeah.
And there was an action to that I loved, and it suited the way we're fishing, because we're on shallow banks. Yeah. For a lot of the stuff, and
that particular lure, look, I mean, with a little bit of practice you could carve half a dozen of those in the afternoon, no problems, and paint them up. That particular lure is weighted to slowly float. Now, I think I had size 6 VMCs, 626 hooks on. If you put a size 4 on, that'll suspend or slowly sink. So it was really, really delicately weighted. It depends a little bit on the salinity at the time, but in salt water, that'll generally just slowly float. And the beauty of that lure is you can cast that in tight to cover, and you can twitch it very, very short, sharp jabs, and it'll dance side to side. Doesn't just wobble, it goes side to side, and it stays really close to the structure, so you don't have to move it far to get some action out of it. And then once you've done that and you get the lure a metre and a half out the bank, then you can just crank it in as you would. But
I learned a fair few things this morning, and that was the whole thing for me. When I heard I was having the chance to come out with Greg and with Phil, I was rubbing my hands together, not to catch fish, but to learn from these boys. As you were saying, it could go the other way, but watching you fish that lure this morning, I fish a lot more aggressively when I'm chasing jacks with deeper diving stuff, but this shallow little thing here, exactly what Greg was just talking about. The shallow sort of and small twitches you were doing, like lots of little twitches, was firing up the fish, and that got a fair few bites on the way through this morning. So
I find with the balsa lure, they have a very crisp action. If they're not heavily weighted, they've got a very crisp action. Yeah. So you don't need to twitch them as hard to get a bit of movement out of them as you can with a plastic lure. Yeah. So, yeah.
Beautiful. All right.
So that's that one. He's
straight to the pool room.
You take that one and put him in the pool.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go from there, mate? Because it's a real mishmash in here.
Yeah, well, let's have a look at some of your sort of recognised stuff before we go into your homemade handcrafted.
I'm embarrassed to show that one. Look at the hooks on it.
I love it. No, that's the same as my box. They've seen plenty of stuff like that from mine over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's your barrow, your go-to barrow?
Yeah, and look, you notice that that's the only one I've got in there. It's actually illegal in North Queensland not to have some sort of gold bomber variant in your tackle box. So, yeah.
Okay, beautiful.
I think it was actually a Reedy's, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I'm with you. So there's that. Are there some? What have you got here? What is that? Well, I can see the RMGs, but what do you got there?
Yeah,
are they Eddie's lures?
They're Eddie's lures. Yeah.
Yeah. From Toowoomba.
Inherited, yes. They're inherited from a mate. Now I don't use them a lot for jacks, but they're more a native's lure. But they're great because they bounce around through structure, and even in fairly shallow water, because they've got a big, large lip on them. Yeah. You can bounce them around. They go head down, and you can bounce them around, and they don't get hung up too often. So I say too often because you do. You still get the odd one.
Big bib keeps the hooks out the road when they're down in it.
Yeah, nice strong action, and they can be worked fairly slowly too. So
almost a collector's item nowadays.
Yeah, I know, and there'll probably be people that will shoot me for even having them in my fishing box. But
I've only got a couple of Eddie's lures. But I was friends and like relatives to some of the guys that used to run Mullet Gut Marine up in Toowoomba. So they had a whole heap. So I'm hoping there's still a few there. All right. So what else can we have a look at? Let's go.
You notice a lot of what's in there is handmade.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Let's have a look at those.
Okay, so look, these are a couple of stick baits that I make. These are slow sinking stick bait.
Yep. Now, what are you using those for?
Look, I wouldn't normally use them for jacks, but we get a few queenfish and that sort of thing in the inlet as well, so I have those in there for that. That one's a floating stick bait. Yeah.
Now, interesting colour designs, colour choices. Talk to me a little bit about your colour, Greg. I've listened to Greg's got a brilliant podcast on colours, more than one actually. So there's a couple of colour podcasts there on his ALF podcast. I'll link those in underneath this video. But talk to me about your colours and what's going on.
Let me tell you, John, I'm not a colours guy at all.
Yeah.
Right? So most of the time, colour is the last thing that I think about. First thing I'm thinking about is the size, the shape, the action, the lure, diving depth. Yeah. You know, can I get into the zone where the fish are? That's the first thing. Yeah. Colour, quite often, it's overestimated how important it is. Yeah. And I don't think it's all that important. And to be perfectly honest, if you, a lot of these lures, I paint them up because I do demonstrations. I paint them up because I write books, and because if my lures don't look professional, people don't buy my books or go to my demonstrations.
Right.
But if I was to just paint that plain flat white, that would work just as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So, obviously that was a frog pattern. Yeah. But it was painted more for fishermen than it was for fish. To be perfectly honest.
Okay. And so fairly slender stick bait, quite heavy. Is that that's not balsa, or have you got a pack on that?
No, that one's Western Red Cedar.
Oh, beautiful.
It's got some weight in it as well, So most of my lures will have some weight in them.
Yeah.
Stick baits like that, obviously they're weighted towards the tail.
Yeah. Is that to give them a dancing walk as they go?
Yeah, you want to be a little bit tail down.
Yeah.
So that when you twitch that rod tip, it pulls the head down and it glides from one side to another.
Yep. And for
the sinking stick baits, they'll be weighted a bit more centrally, just so they float down horizontally.
You've run courses on making timber lures for a long time. If someone's wanting to get into it, I'll direct them to a link where they can get more information.
Well, I've actually taken all my timber lure making stuff offline for the moment.
Oh, right.
I've been so busy with the podcast that I just haven't had time to do that as well.
Right.
So, but look, I mean, hit me up. Hit me up on Facebook or whatever. I'm always happy to answer questions and help people out. Yeah.
One of the first things I think you might get, what's your favourite timbers to work with as a start? So if someone's watching this video and they're like, oh, I wouldn't mind making some of my own just to try things out, they've seen those, what sort of timbers might they go and pick up?
That one's made from balsa.
Beautiful.
That you can buy at Bunnings for next to nothing. Right?
Yeah.
So, and it's so easy to carve, and you can even sand it to shape. You don't even necessarily have to use a knife to carve that.
Beautiful.
Western Red Cedar's great.
Yeah.
It's a little bit toxic though. Some people are allergic to the dust, so
I love the smell of it. That could explain a couple of personality traits at this point.
And gelutong is the other one that I use a fair bit.
What's that?
Gelutong.
Okay.
But you'll have to order. You won't find it at Bunnings or you'll have to order it specially.
Okay.
But it's a very easy to carve, very lightweight.
Yeah.
But reasonably tough timber.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What else is in Greg Vinall's lure box?
Look, you wade in and pull something out, and I'll try and explain it. I won't necessarily.
More stick baits. God, there's some nice finishes on those though. Even though you were saying the finish isn't your priority, boy, if it's not, you've still got it nailed. Let me just see. Oh, you've got some RMGs in here, and these
quite a few RMGs, yes.
Okay, so what are you using those for, and why are they in your tackle box today?
They're in my my barra collection, really. So yeah.
And are they specifically for trolling, deep trolling for barra, or running down
I
banks?
I cast them. Yeah. Yep.
Beautiful.
They're again, big wide diving. Anytime you've got a big wide diving lip, that lure's going to go head down. Yeah. And the hooks are sort of pulled back by the current, of course. And when that hits timber, it flips the hooks up. So the hooks are protected from getting hung up on timber. So. Okay.
Now let's have a look. You had one of these tied on this morning, like a little lipless lure.
I did. Let me have a look.
Have you still got it there?
I've got something similar.
Because we've had a look at a couple of stick baits, it's still lipless. Have a look.
But that's the style of lure that I had on.
Yeah, and what are you using these for?
Look, you can use these anywhere that you'd use a soft vibe.
Yeah.
They're great. They're really strong action. They can be worked really fast. They can be worked horizontally, vertically. They can be burned. They can be dropped down, allowed to sit on the bottom, and then pop back. Really strong vibration to them. They've got a bit of a rattle in them as well.
Wow.
So that's built into the timber, so it's laminated timber. Great for, I wouldn't use them so much for jacks.
Yeah.
Being a lipless crank, same as soft vibes, they tend to be a bit snag prone. Yeah. More for casting over mud flats and sand flats and that sort of thing, bouncing off the bottom, but definitely the barra will take them. Yeah.
I can see there's a Terminator in there. These are hard to come by, especially in the old style version.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you fished with that?
That's brand new. You can see that one hasn't been used, and I found that recently in my collection. I went, oh, I should fish that one, and that's why it's in the box with no hooks on it either. But,
Okay, you've got some little shape lures in here that I wouldn't have, like something like that, like a jackal squirrel, I'd expect to see in a jack box, right? And that's one of my favourites and really popular.
Deadly.
But when I look at something like that, like what's the idea behind it? It looks a little bit like a toadfish, but I know that there's going to be more going on with that. What's going on?
That's a fat. Again, it's got a rattle in it. This one's got a heavy knocker rattle in it.
Right.
Whether you can hear that or not.
Yep.
That's actually a wake bait. So you can see the very, very small bib but angled downwards.
Yeah.
That just basically skims along the surface and creates a big wake. So you could use that. Not so much for jacks perhaps, but you could use that anywhere you're using cicada style lures for bass. Any surface bass fishing, they're a great lure. Similar sort of thing. This is a square bill, US style square bill. Yeah. And weighted and with the square bib to deflect off timber and that sort of thing. So they're really for casting. Well, that one's not so much for timber, but really for casting over shallow water in fresh water. Yeah. We might pick up Saratoga, or we might pick up sooties or something like that up here on those. But
okay, so something for sooties and toga. The same thing here. Who makes these?
Yeah, to be honest, these are
wow.
Yeah, these are I don't know, I'm trying to think what they are now.
Jeez, they've got a big rattle in them.
They've got a
really noisy.
They're made by these guys.
Okay.
Bill Lewis. Okay. So these are from the US. So
super
the
noisy.
Rattle traps. So these are the same stable. And to be honest, I haven't fished with them much, and I put them in the box to experiment with, but we didn't get round to that. So.
Who makes that?
Oh, that one's mine. That one's one of my handmade ones.
Look at that.
Yeah, let me snag it there so you can see it properly.
Okay. Has that got a wicked side-to-side like rolly action with a bib like that?
Anything with that flat shad side, you can really get a nice action out of it. Yeah.
Did you do the finish on that?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Wow. Now, while I've got you, Greg, let's talk a little bit, because you've obviously made so many handcrafted timber lures. If someone's got a lure that's out of tune, what can they do? Let's say this lure is swimming off to the left. Yep. What options have they got to tune their lure back up?
Let's have a look firstly at one that's got a toe point on its nose.
Yep.
Right, so like that, and you can see it's handmade, so you can see that that's not perfectly centered.
Yeah.
So that lure might need to be tuned. And so if that lure's swimming to the left, you need to get the pliers on that tow point, hold it really, really close, especially with a soft timber like balsa, you can easily break the nose.
Yeah.
Hold it really, really close like that, grab a pair of pliers and bend it to the right.
Yeah.
Right? And that'll tune it up.
And it only takes this, not even a millimetre sometimes, isn't it?
It can be a very, very small amount.
Yeah.
Also have a look at the hook hangers underneath and at the back, and you can straighten them up as well if they're a little bit out of square.
Yeah. And
that'll help as well. With these guys, it's a little bit more tricky.
Yeah.
But we don't have as much trouble with them swimming out of tune, I find. But again, you've got to try and hold it so you're not going to break anything. Get a pair of pliers on there and bend it to whichever side you need to.
Yeah.
Interestingly, and I'm sure this is a trick that you've used before, particularly with, not so much with the squirrels, but with some of the crankbait style lures. Yeah, sometimes it actually pays to put them out of tune, because you can swim them under docks and under trees and around mangroves. You can cast into clear water and then swim them to the side and put them in danger where the fish are going to be. So, and
especially when it comes down to, like, a lot of my videos have been around jack fishing, and jacks, if you can get it in front of their face, that can be the difference between a busy morning catching fish and missing.
Yep. Another lipless crankbait. This guy's silent.
Okay.
He's silent and he's balsa but heavily weighted so that he sinks.
Yep.
And the beauty of that is really, really strong side-to-side action at really slow speed.
Okay.
And it'll go down, you know, sort of sit at that kind of angle and just along.
Yeah.
I love flat-sided lures, and I love lipless lures because they pump out heaps of vibration without creating a lot of drag on the rod. So you can fish larger lures, you can fish them faster.
Yeah.
And you can create all sorts of vibration.
Yeah.
Without the rod buckling over like you're cranking in a house brick or something.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, well, look, folks, I have learnt a ton this morning. I've been out fishing with these guys, and straight away when we rolled in, I was so stoked to see you had a lipless lure on one of your rods.
I did.
And Greg has spoken, I think, at this point to more fishermen in the last few years than anybody, and got more insights than I've ever heard from anyone, and been able to bring them to a podcast form to share with everybody, which is just brilliant. So we might round this video out, Greg. But I want to hear, I mean, there's stuff that we could pour over here, and I'm sure we could keep going all morning, but I'd love to hear a little bit about your podcast, where you're going with it, and I suppose to just share with people, if you've had your head in the sand for the last couple of years in this lure world in Australia, well, it's been going gangbusters. There's been a whole heap of development. I feel like it's a really interesting place to be playing as a fisherman at the moment in Australia.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot going on. Yeah. It's exciting times.
And your podcast is right at the forefront of being able to draw out great information from guests. So if you haven't been there, make sure you check it out. I'll put the links down underneath. But Greg, what is it all about, and what are you doing with it?
Well, it's called the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast, and that's because it's all about lure fishing in Australia. So that probably doesn't come as any surprise to you. But the idea of the podcast when I first started, John, was to try and create a bit of a resource for recreational anglers and to encourage more people into lure fishing, because there's lots of people bait fishing, and that's fine, and there's lots of people like fly fishing, and that's fine too. But lure fishing's my passion. For a whole range of reasons, and so the idea was to encourage more people into lure fishing and to create a bit of a resource so that people who are new to the sport could get some basic information, and to do it in a way that they get basic information about a particular species at a particular location. So 90% of the episodes, and we've got 380 odd episodes up now, I believe, 90% of them are about one species and one location. And I ask the guests some fairly standard questions about where to look for the fish, how to find them, what tides, what conditions, what tackle to use, and then give me 3 lures that are going to work in this location on this species.
Great.
And we go through how to catch fish with those lures. So that's how most episodes run. And we've got a pretty good following now. About 45,000 odd listeners who tune in every month.
Beautiful library that covers right across Australia. If you're a lure fisherman in Australia, I guarantee there is at least a dozen things there for you to check out, and some really, some information that might just challenge your own thoughts, but put you in a place of learning where you just become a better fisherman. And that comes from me and a lot of my mates who I lean on for information. We keep coming back to the podcast, and it's just been brilliant, mate.
Excellent. Well, I try and get a wide and varied range of guests on them. As you say, we've covered about 40 odd species now. And we've got a location map as well, so you can go around and find where all the episodes are around Australia.
On your website?
On the website.
Perfect.
Yeah, you can go there and click through those locations to listen to the podcast as well. So, yeah, the idea is to generate useful information that really helps people to catch some fish. But also, I'm very passionate about sustainable fishing. I'm very passionate about handling fish properly and making sure that we leave a fishery for our kids and their kids. Yeah. And so that's part of what I do.
It's all done in the right light.
Yeah.
Mate, that's fabulous. So what we might do, we might wrap the video up there. I feel so lucky to have had a chat with Greg Vinall, checked out what's in his lure box. But also, if you haven't quite got there yet, or you've listened to a few and then fallen by the wayside, it's time to get back on there and get back into it, because that's how I do my fishing prep. The night before, I get the lure podcast going and get my froth on, and it gives me things to think about the next morning again. So it's brilliant as a resource for everyone, and that's right from the best anglers in the country right the way down. We're all learning, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. As soon as you stop learning, it's time to stop fishing, because
the exciting part.
There's nothing left. Yeah.
All right. Well, Greg, thanks a lot for your time, mate. We'll wrap it up there.
It's been awesome having a fish with you.
Yeah, we'll do it again sometime. But we are travelling at the moment, and we've pulled up in Cairns. That's where I've caught up with Greg and Phil today. It's been a great morning out on the water. We didn't manage a jack. We caught everything but it didn't happen this morning.
Jacks heard you were coming, mate. They went home. No, John Costello's come to Cairns. It's time to leave.
So, but that's going to be a good story that we can laugh about for a while now, Greg. But we are going to continue the adventure right around the country, and I'm going to keep sharing as much as I can with you. I hope you've enjoyed today's video, folks. Leave some comments, let me know your thoughts, and if you want to get on the podcast, make sure you check it out. It's the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast. This has been a video with Greg Doc Lures Vinall, and I'll see you in the next one. But that looks like a little herring or a mullet, isn't it? Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's a balsa one again.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. One of yours, eh?
Yeah, that one's had a bit of work, as you can see. It's been battered.
Yeah. Beautiful design, and nice heavy hook hangers and terminals, so that you could pull a barra on that, no dramas.
No problems,
Yeah. Okay. All right, mate.